Hey everyone, welcome back to the FU Cancer podcast. Today we're discussing plant-based eating and its role in cancer prevention and treatment. What we eat has a huge impact on our health, and for those affected by cancer, nutrition can be a very powerful tool. But what exactly does a plant-based diet look like, and how can it support people before, during, and after treatment? To help us break it all down, we're joined by Karen Pettengill, a board certified oncology dietitian who works with patients across the care continuum, from diagnosis through survivorship. Karen is passionate about making nutrition simple and practical, and she's here to share her expert insights with you that you can apply to your own health journey. Thanks for listening to the FU Cancer podcast. My name is Christina Rollins. I'm a dietitian, mom, and wife to a pretty awesome cancer survivor. We said FU to cancer nearly 25 years ago and are still going strong. I'm excited to share the FU Cancer movement, where we are a community of survivors, fighters, caregivers, and advocates, connecting our shared experiences, passion, and determination to live a holistic and well-balanced life. Stay tuned, because we've got a lot to talk about. Well, Karen, thank you so much for joining us today on the FU Cancer podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So a plant-based diet is a term that I think gets thrown around a lot, but it can mean different things to different people. So how would you define it in a way that's easy for us to understand?
So I think oftentimes whenever people hear the term plant-based diet, they turn to run the other way. And that's just because I think that people think it's an all or nothing, or they have to cut out their favorite foods, or, oh, I could never do plant-based because I love steak or I love cheese. And that's the big misconception with a plant-based diet. I think it gets mixed up with a vegan diet. So a vegan diet is where we completely eliminate the animal protein sources or animal sources in our diet. But a plant-based diet really just means that we're kind of shifting the focus. So we're trying to include more plants into our meals. So our fruits, our vegetables, our whole grains, our beans, nuts, and seeds, all those plant-based foods. We can still include animal products, so it's not an all or nothing. We just want those animal products to be more of like a complement to our meal, not the main focus. I often use the term plant forward with my patients. A lot of times people are familiar with the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, the anti-inflammatory diet. Those are all essentially plant-based diets, just with different packaging or different marketing. So all of those are also just promoting trying to get more plants into our diet. And specific to cancer, the American Institute for Cancer Research has this plate model. It's called the New American Plate, which is also sharing in that philosophy of trying to get more plants in our diet. And they really recommend aiming to include 2/3 of our plate be plant foods. So those fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans. And then the other third can be our animal proteins. I do prefer us to try to opt for more of those leaner options. So more chicken, fish, ground turkey, low-fat dairy, but yeah, ultimately a plant-based diet, it's kind of the best of both worlds. We're just focusing more on getting plants into our diet.
And what are some of the maybe lesser known benefits of adopting a plant-based diet beyond just general health?
Yeah, so a plant-based diet is going to help reduce the risk for various diseases. So cancer, heart disease, diabetes. It also is going to help support the immune system, helps reduce inflammation. It's also really helping us increase our fiber intake because we're getting our fiber from plant foods. So those fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, all those foods, like I mentioned. And this is something that we're usually lacking in our diet. There is a study that showed that only 5% of Americans meet our daily recommended fiber intake, which is kind of alarming, right? 5% is pretty, not very many people. So this is something we can all benefit from trying to work on incorporating more of those plant-based foods in our diet. So we get our fiber intake a little bit more up. Also, plant-based diet is going to be helpful for maintaining or achieving a healthy body weight. Another big point, just for that lesser known benefit, is cost. So, when it comes to plant based protein, especially those foods that are like our whole plant based proteins, like our beans and our lentils, those are quite affordable. So, if I have patients that are pretty big meat eaters and they are used to having, a meat or serving a meat with all their dinner meals. I'm like, hey, let's just try 1 day a week. So one meatless meal, let's try to do that. Swap out the ground beef for beans or lentils. And not only are you getting the benefits of getting that plant-based protein and the extra fiber, you also might notice that you're cutting back a little bit on your grocery bill.
Which is always a nice added benefit,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, in what ways can a plant-based diet offer added benefits for someone who is undergoing cancer treatment, or maybe a person who's living with in an immunocompromised state?
Yeah, so much can feel out of your control when you receive a cancer diagnosis. So choosing those nutritious foods gives patients some of that control back. I would say nutrition during treatment is going to be really individualized based on cancer type, the treatment that you're getting, any potential side effects. So when I'm meeting with a patient who's going through cancer treatment, if their appetite's good and they're not having any side effects that are negatively impacting their nutrition status, I always really encourage them to adopt more of that plant-based diet. And that's because you're going to be getting more vitamins, more minerals, antioxidants that are helping support your immune function, helping fight cancer. And ultimately, when we have a good nutrition status, we tend to, it helps improve our tolerance to treatment and it can help with treatment outcomes as well.
So, one concern that I think we often hear about the plant-based diet is protein. When
Mhm.
somebody's undergoing cancer treatment, we say, eat enough protein, keep your strength up, etc.
Yeah.
So people are concerned that the plant-based diet won't get them where they need to be. So what are some excellent plant-based sources of protein, and how can individuals ensure that they're getting enough on a daily basis?
Yeah, so a couple different categories when it comes to the plant-based protein. First off, I would say beans and lentils. So if you're easy like me, I like anything that's a little bit easier, more practical in the kitchen, you can do canned options. So canned beans, if you can find canned lentils, also a great option. You can put these in soups and salads. And kind of going back to what I said earlier about how plant-based diet doesn't have to be an all or nothing. If you're having, for example, maybe you're having Taco Tuesday and you're having like a burrito bowl or tacos with ground beef or ground turkey, adding in beans to that, you're getting some extra protein, you're getting more fiber. So you might find that, you're still getting that flavor of the meat, but you might find that you're even eating less of it because you're feeling full from adding the extra beans in. So, like I said, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing there. Also soy products, so tofu, soy milk, and edamame. Those are all going to be good plant-based protein sources. I'm a huge fan of edamame. You can find that in the freezer section near actually other vegetables. Maybe it's like $1 or $2. You put that in the microwave for a couple of minutes. I pair that a
Mhm.
lot with any like Asian inspired dish that I do. So
Mhm.
easy protein source there. And then lastly, more of like our nuts, seeds, nut butters. So peanut butter, almond butter, those are all going to be our other plant-based protein sources. I'm a huge fan of chia seeds for people.
Mhm.
The great benefit of all of these plant-based sources is not only are we getting protein, but they're also packed with fiber. So chia seeds, just even a small amount, they pack in a ton of fiber. You can do chia seed pudding, which is super easy. It's just chia seeds and then any type of milk that you want to use. You can use a plant-based milk if you prefer. Usually add a little bit of a sweetener or a little bit of vanilla, put that in the fridge, have some berries on top of that. That makes a great breakfast or a great snack. You can add chia seeds to overnight oatmeal or oatmeal in general. So, good way to get more fiber in our diet. As far as making sure we're getting enough protein, especially when it comes to those plant-based sources, making sure that we're getting it spread throughout the day. So getting it spread across all of our meals and snacks. This is something that I'm talking about with patients every single day of making sure that we're getting that protein, not just, at our dinner meal or our lunch, but also our breakfast. Breakfast tends to be where people I see kind of struggle with the most of getting protein at that time. Um, Another way of making sure that we're getting enough is I'll tell patients to try to track their protein for a day or two. So I'll give them a goal to shoot for. In general, every patient's different, but typically when we're going through treatment, I usually give people the range of like 1.2 to 1.5 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Like I said, everyone's a little different, but I'll have them track that for a day or two. If they're really getting it low and it's really a struggle for them to get more protein in their diet, I oftentimes will recommend adding in a protein supplement. So, like a protein shake or a powder. But ultimately, I want us to try to aim to get our protein through whole foods first. But those shakes or powders can be beneficial, especially going through treatment if needed. And you can find those in plant-based options as well. So, pea protein is an example of a powder or a shake that you'll find commonly as a plant-based option. But ultimately, it doesn't have to be an all or nothing. So if you're trying to get more plant-based protein in your diet and you feel like you're still not getting enough and you enjoy, animal protein sources, you can still include those animal sources on a plant-based diet. Just trying to, I would say, kind of aim for serving size around the size of the palm of your hand is usually an appropriate portion size for most people.
So thinking about, increasing our plant-based intake and adding more nutrients into our diet, there seems to be some debate specifically around antioxidants. So we
Mm.
know they're good for overall health, but is there any concern that excessive antioxidants could pose a risk for individuals undergoing cancer treatment?
Yeah, so I would say this is kind of a hot topic. But I always tell patients I'm not concerned about the antioxidants in your whole foods. So, like your fruits and your vegetables, you can still include these in your diet when you're on treatment. I want you to include those foods in your diet. But as far as antioxidant supplements, these are going to be a lot more potent. So, we do recommend avoiding antioxidant supplements during treatment, and that's because that research is pretty mixed. Some studies have found that taking antioxidant supplements can actually negatively impact outcomes. So it's best to proceed with caution when it comes to the supplements. And if you ever have questions about, herbs or specific supplements in general when you're getting treatments, always good to check with your care team just to make sure
Mhm.
there's no potential interactions.
Well, and I think just remembering that vitamins, supplements, herbals, antioxidant pills, those should all be on your med list, right? You should be
Yes,
sharing that with your healthcare provider so they can evaluate that along with everything else going on.
definitely, definitely. Mhm.
Well, I think earlier you made a really great case for fiber and the importance of increasing fiber. Can you talk specifically about the benefits of fiber for someone who's undergoing treatment?
Yeah, so I think we can always benefit from getting a little bit more research on this topic, specifically for fiber and actively getting treatment. There was a study done on patients with melanoma that were getting immunotherapy, and they actually found that those that ate more fiber had a healthier gut, and they actually had better treatment outcomes. So I think that's really promising that we really have that data to
Mhm.
back up that connection. But in general, when I'm working with patients that are getting treatment, specific with fiber, a lot of times we're having the discussion surrounding changes in their bowel habits. So if they're getting treatment, maybe they're having side effects that cause constipation or diarrhea. So not just fiber in general, but the type of fiber can be helpful in managing side effects. So for example, if someone is experiencing constipation, I'm talking to them about trying to get more insoluble fiber in their diet, which is the type of fiber that I always tell people think of like your roughage, like think of your nuts, think of your seeds, your whole grains, the peels, raw vegetables. Those are helping speed up digestion. So helpful for moving things along. So helpful for
Mhm.
having constipation. Now, if we're, for example, getting experiencing diarrhea from our chemotherapy or from our treatment, those foods can make that diarrhea worse. So instead of focusing more on those foods, some foods to incorporate more is going to be soluble fiber sources. So soluble fiber sources help slow down digestion, so it helps firm up those watery stools. So foods like bananas, potatoes without the skin, applesauce, green beans, oatmeal, those are some of those foods that are higher in that soluble fiber. So fiber can play a really big role, also helping side effect management with treatment.
And what about the broader population? So individuals not necessarily undergoing cancer treatment, what's the big picture for them when it comes to fiber?
Yeah, so fiber is, I would say, the most important nutrient for overall health. So, for so many different reasons, it's helping lower our blood cholesterol levels, it's helping stabilize our blood sugar, beneficial for our gut health. It also plays a really big role in weight management because it's helping us feel fuller quicker. And the American Institute for Cancer Research really recommends aiming for about 30 grams of fiber per day for cancer prevention and cancer survivorship. And that's a lot. So if you're not one that really eats many of these fiber-rich foods or plant foods, 30 grams a day might sound like a whole lot. So I really tell patients, like, let's focus on one meal at a time or one habit at a
Mhm.
time. So, for example, if your breakfast is eggs, white toast, and juice, some little swaps. Can we swap from, white bread to 100% whole grain bread and then swap out the juice for a whole fruit? That adds a
Mhm.
lot of extra fiber. Or, can we try to add an extra serving of vegetables with dinner? Or, if we're having oatmeal for breakfast, which is a good fiber source, can we, add a serving of fruit to add extra fiber, or
Mhm.
adding in some chia seed or ground flaxseed to up the fiber content there. So those small little adjustments can really make a big difference in our total fiber intake and, also having an impact on our overall health as well.
So, last question. I know we're almost out of time, but thinking about the evidence, does a plant-based diet also help reduce the risk of certain cancers? And if so, why is that?
Yeah, so the reason why is because plant foods are all going to contain phytonutrients, which are the nutrients that are going to help protect our body from disease such as cancer. These are going to give us more fiber, more vitamins, minerals that are also going to help protect our body. And I always think it's important to know that not one single food decreases cancer risk, but really the variety of those plant foods is where we see the benefits. There is strong evidence that a high fiber diet helps reduce the risk for colorectal cancer specifically. And then there's some evidence that including more fruits and vegetables can help reduce risk for cancers in the head neck region, esophageal, as well as stomach cancer.
Wonderful. Well, I think you've made a really great case for a plant-based diet. So thank you so much for sharing this information with us. It's been great to chat with you tonight.
Thank you too.
And listeners, that's a wrap for today's episode. If there's one thing to remember, I think that it's small plant-based changes can add up to some really big health benefits. So keep that in mind. Be sure to check out our website, fucancer.health, to learn more. And if you found this episode helpful, share it with a friend, like and follow us on Spotify or YouTube. And we hope to see you again real soon. So until next time, I'm Christina Rollins. Thanks for listening.